Welcome back to Neo and Jiho, Part 36. Remember to subscribe and tap the notification bell not to miss any part. The jet rose into a clean night sky, and the island fell away like a secret they would keep forever. In the soft cabin light, the four sat close to each other, not because the seats required it, but because love makes distances small. The hum of the engines became a lullaby. Staff moved quietly, setting down warm towels, ginger tea, and a small dish of sea salt that Toomey had carried like a treasure since the garden. Neo leaned back, calm at last. Her hand lived in Jiho's hand. She was tired in a sweet way, the way a heart is tired after too much joy. The little box with the tiny socks and the card, "You are going to be a father," rested inside her tote, close to her side like a soft bell that rang every few minutes in her chest. Across the aisle, Insu and Toomey shared a low laugh that needed no reason. They had become easy around each other. Their smiles came at the same time now. When the attendant placed fruit and warm bread between them, they split everything in two as if they had been doing it for years. Sometimes their fingers met at the edge of a plate and neither moved first. It was not show. It was a quiet promise still forming. The cabin felt like home in the sky. Wood trim, cream leather, a table that held only what mattered. 4 cups, a plate of grapes, a folded blanket that someone always pulled over Neo's knees. Jiho watched her with that steady attention he had carried since the night by the roses. He asked for nothing. He made sure everything was already there. They talked about tomorrow in light strokes at first, the schedule, the car at the hangar, a short sleep, a call to the doctor in the morning to arrange blood work and a gentle check. Then the talk drifted to the week ahead. The laughter faded to a long, soft silence when the same thought reached both of them. They did not need to debate it. The night had already told them what to do. They agreed to it the way people agree to breathe. 1 week from the engagement. A wedding that did not try to impress the world, only to honor the love that brought them here. Gardens before the house, a small orchestra, a short aisle, because they had already walked the long road, family close, staff who had become family closer still, no strangers at the center, no show, only vows. Neo rested her head on Jiho's shoulder. He did not move. He let the moment settle over them like a warm blanket. When she closed her eyes, he traced slow circles on her hand until her body found a calm rhythm again. He did not speak the word father aloud. He let the joy of it sit quietly between them like dawn waiting behind a mountain. Opposite them, Insu told a small story about the children at the orphanage and the way one boy used to knot his tie all wrong on purpose just to make everyone laugh. Toomey listened the way she always did, head tilted, eyes bright. She said she wanted to learn the names of all the children, not in a list, but in her heart. They tested each other's memories, made a game of it, and failed on purpose to let the other win. Then they lost on purpose at the same time and laughed harder. Love taught them silly things and serious things in the same breath. The attendant dimmed the lights. The jet moved through dark air like a whisper. Neo dozed. Jiho did not. He watched the rise and fall of her breath as if watching a tide. When a small wave of nausea came and passed, he was already there with ginger and water and the pinch of sea salt that had become a little ritual. Toomey looked over and nodded with sister pride. Insu looked over and nodded with brother respect. No one needed words. A low message came in through a secure channel. Only Jiho felt the vibration on his wrist. Taiho's name. Short update. The villa was ready. The list, once meant only for vetting a future event, had been used for something better. A welcome home that would never feel like a trap. Families called, staff briefed, access points scanned, cameras placed where they would protect, not expose, media invited under rules that were not suggestions. Fireworks permitted, cleared, timed. It would be safe, it would be beautiful. It would feel like joy, not noise. The city lights rose to meet them hours later. The jet descended and the world looked like a map full of lamp-lit rivers. They touched down in private calm. Even the wind seemed gentle at the hangar. Neo woke the way a child wakes when you do not shake her. Slowly, fully, with a smile that tells you she knew she was safe, even in sleep. A short drive followed, cloaked by night. The car turned off the main road and the villa's outer trees appeared, dark and tall, holding the sky up like careful hands. Neo felt something else then, a live stillness, the kind that means people are waiting not to take but to give. Then the villa woke like a festival. A ribbon of golden fireworks climbed the sky and broke into color. Guests began to cheer, not the loud, careless cheer of crowds, but the layered cheer of people who had been holding the good news in their mouths and could finally let it fly. Friends from the company, the older ant-like staff who loved as quietly as they worked, a few board members who had not flinched when storms blew, the gardener who had kept roses alive in winter, a driver whose son had learned to draw because Neo once put a pencil in his hand. People who mattered. People who would still be there when the lights dimmed. At the center of it all stood Grandmother, small and bright-eyed, wrapped in a simple coat that did not try to compete with the night. She did not need to move to be the warmest place in the garden. The old maid, steady, wise, stood just behind her, hands folded, ready with a shawl if the wind changed. Jiho stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand like a vow. Neo stepped onto the stones, and the welcome folded around her. Tumi and Insu came behind, hand in hand without performance. The cameras caught that detail, and the nation would read it in the morning without anyone needing to write a caption. Media had been allowed to the edge, and only to the edge. A rope line, a shallow platform, a set of rules that were clear and kind. Questions would be taken. Faces would be photographed. No one would be rushed. No one would be cornered. The head of security stood where he always does at a moment like this, far enough that joy had room, close enough that trouble would not. Taiho's eyes missed nothing. His earpiece hardly moved. He looked like a wall and a servant at the same time. This is the rare shape of real power. Grandmother opened her arms. Jiho brought Neo to her like a gift he had promised to keep safe. The old hands went to Neo's hair, then to her cheeks, then to her belly in a small, secret blessing that everyone somehow felt. It was not a show. It was a prayer. She drew Jiho close as well and rested her palm against his jaw for a heartbeat. A whole book lived in that touch. Then Grandmother reached for Tumi and drew her in with the same warmth, because this house knew that Neo and Tumi were two halves of one story. It was not lost on anyone that Insu stood next to Tumi and did not let go of her hand. Grandmother saw it, and her eyes smiled in the way elders smile when they see the future, and decide to say nothing so the future can grow on its own. The fireworks softened, but did not stop. The sky kept blooming like a garden. A small platform waited near the front steps, a microphone that would not squeal, a simple stand, no banners, no slogans, only light, the color of honey. The first photographs were gentle, hands raised, heads turned, two couples standing in a symmetry they had not planned. Then the questions began. They were not claws tonight. They were open palms. One asked about the proposal song and the way a night can feel like a lifetime. One asked about the date everyone wanted to know and no one wanted to push. One asked about work, because love was not the only thing that had blossomed this week. Neo and Jiho answered with smiles and short, honest lines that did not make promises they could not keep. A different question found Tumi. It was asked softly, without heat. How does a sister protect a sister in a world that can be sharp? Tumi did not step forward. She did not deliver a speech. She only smiled, small and clear, and squeezed Insu's hand. The lens caught the gesture. It was enough. In that single silent answer, the country remembered the girl who would defend a loved one, and the woman who now chose peace because love had given her a steadier place to stand. Insu stood tall without trying to be tall. He did not block. He did not direct. He stood as if to say, her voice is hers, my hand is mine. We choose quiet tonight. The media noted it and did not press her again. Jiho took the small stand when the moment was right. The house could feel it. He did not turn the night into a show. He did not look for big words. He offered the truth in a single line the way a man offers a ring. Clear, simple, forever. The wedding would be in 1 week, at home, in the garden where love had learned to speak in their lives. The guests who stood on the lawn tonight would stand on that lawn again. The nation could watch, but the vows would remain a private fire between two people and the family who had held them up. The cheer that rose felt like sunrise. It rolled through the trees and into the air and came back down as laughter. On the rope line, cameras clicked, and for once the pictures felt like gratitude, not hunger. Grandmother asked for a chair and sat where she could see everything. She watched the way Neo watched Jiho as if there were music only she could hear. She watched the way Tumi leaned toward Insu when she laughed, just enough to show a heart beginning to rest. She watched Taiho remain a moving stillness at the rim of it all, a man who worked so the night could be simple for everyone else. In her eyes, all of them were children, and all of them were kings. That is how elder love works. Later, inside, the house filled with warm talk and the clink of glasses that held nothing stronger than sparkles and ginger. Neo ate a little, and then a little more. Tumi kept a hand near a pocket with sea salt, out of habit and hope. Insu drifted between tasks, checking arrivals, checking smiles, checking nothing and everything at once. Taiho kept to the edge, where he does his best work. He signed off on the final sweep quietly. A message moved from his phone to Jiho's wrist, quick and clean. The board member who had streamed the private feed would not be a problem much longer. Options had been prepared, all legal, all firm. The company would not have a public storm. It would have a quiet sunrise. The message ended there. Tonight did not need more talk of threats. Tonight had earned its peace. A late call came from a private clinic. The doctor would see Neo in the morning. The appointment would be discreet. The staff had already signed their silence. Jiho thanked them and did not say good night, because you do not finish a prayer by saying good night. Near midnight, the garden dimmed. Lanterns went out one by one the way a mother puts children to sleep, soft and sure. The last fireworks drew a white line over the house and broke into 1,000 stars that looked like the ones God makes when people are not watching. The photos the nation would wake up to had already been taken. Neo's head turned toward Jiho, a hand on her belly that looked like a blessing. Jiho's face, open in a way men rarely show in front of a lens. Tumi leaning into Insu's shoulder while she laughed like a girl who had finally put her heavy bag down. Grandmother's hands raised for a breath, not to wave, but to seal the joy. When the gates closed, the quiet did not feel like an end. It felt like a beginning that had waited for the right night to step forward. They slept in rooms that remembered them. Before dawn, the house woke in whispers. A driver warmed the car. A nurse laid out 2 thin blankets. The kitchen left out toast and fruit and a note that did not need a signature for the morning check. Come back safe and smiling. The dawn carried a softness that morning, as if the sky itself knew what kind of day it was meant to be. Jiho woke earlier than usual, his eyes opening before the alarm, his body restless with anticipation. He moved quietly, careful not to disturb Neo as she slept curled against the sheets. Her breathing calm, but her hand already resting protectively over her stomach. He stood for a long moment at the edge of the bed, watching her. There was a stillness about her that felt sacred. When Neo stirred and met his eyes with a sleepy smile, Jiho's chest tightened. He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, whispering only with his eyes. Today, we will know. The car ride was quiet at first, the city still half asleep. A mist lingered along the roads, blurring the edges of tall buildings and traffic lights. Jiho drove carefully, one hand steady on the wheel, the other reaching across to lace his fingers with hers. Neo squeezed back, her palm warm but damp with nerves. Her heart raced with 100 thoughts. Would everything be fine? Would she be strong enough? What would it mean to hold life inside her for the next months? Would she be a good mother? She turned to Jiho, searching his face for calm, and she found it there. His profile was lit faintly by the early sun, his jaw steady, his mouth curved into a soft smile as though even the thought of this morning was enough to anchor him. By the time they reached the clinic, Neo felt both anxious and comforted. The building was not large, but it was discreet, wrapped in pale stone and shaded by tall trees. It looked more like a quiet retreat than a medical facility. That was exactly why Jiho had chosen it. Away from the chaos, away from cameras, a place where privacy could breathe. The receptionist welcomed them without fuss, her tone respectful, her smile discreet. Neo felt a wave of gratitude. The waiting area smelled faintly of lavender. A vase of lilies stood by the wide window, their petals catching the early light. Neo sat down, her knees pressed together, her hand tightening around Jiho's. He rubbed his thumb slowly across her knuckles, a steadying rhythm, as though he knew her heart was racing. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Soon the nurse called them in, and Neo's chest lifted sharply. Jiho guided her with a hand at her back, his touch protective. The examination room was clean, softly lit, the kind of place where even silence felt gentle. The doctor greeted them warmly, his face lined with years of experience, his voice kind. "Congratulations on reaching this stage," he said. His words carried no ceremony, yet they felt heavy, like a blessing. Neo lay back on the examination bed, her breath shallow. Jiho remained close, his hand immediately seeking hers, his eyes fixed on her face as though to reassure her that she was not alone. The doctor prepared the ultrasound with practiced calm, explaining each step, but Neo hardly heard him. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She shut her eyes for a moment, whispering silently, "Please let everything be well. Please let me be strong." The room dimmed slightly as the monitor flickered to life. A hush fell, deeper than before. Even the hum of the machine seemed sacred. At first, the screen showed only shadows, waves of gray and white. Neo stared, confused, uncertain what she was seeing. Then a sound pierced the stillness, a steady rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, trembling. That sound, it was not hers. It was small, insistent, alive. Jiho froze. His entire body trembled as though struck by something too big to hold. His grip on Neo's hand tightened until their knuckles turned white. His breath hitched, his chest rising unevenly. Tears spilled without warning, sliding down his cheeks. He pressed his forehead against Neo's hand and let out a sob that shook the room. "That," his voice cracked, unsteady. "That's our baby." Neo's own tears streamed freely now. She covered her mouth with her free hand, unable to believe what her ears were hearing. The sound filled the room, filled her heart, filled every space inside her with light. But the doctor raised a finger gently. "Listen carefully," he said, his tone carrying a hint of awe. Another rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. A second heartbeat. Neo gasped so loudly it almost sounded like a cry. Her whole body quivered, her hand flying instinctively to her stomach. Her tears doubled, spilling in streams. She turned her wide eyes toward Jiho, who stared at the screen in shock. "There are 2 heartbeats," the doctor explained softly, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Twins. You are 7 weeks pregnant, and both heartbeats are strong." Neo's cry filled the room, half sob, half laugh. She shook her head in disbelief, but joy poured through her, flooding her chest until she thought it might burst. "2," she whispered through tears. "2 lives." Jiho dropped to his knees beside her bed. He could no longer remain standing. His body refused to contain the storm of joy inside him. His hands trembled as he reached for her stomach, as though he could already touch the tiny lives within. He pressed his lips gently against the soft curve of her belly, kissing it as though it were the most precious altar. His tears soaked the fabric. But he did not stop. "My miracles," he whispered against her stomach, his voice breaking with devotion. "My angels, both of you." Neo reached down, her fingers weaving into his hair, holding him close. She wept openly, the sound raw and beautiful. She had never felt such completeness in her life, not when she graduated, not even when she first said yes to Jiho. This was different. This was eternal. Her heart whispered to the little lives within, "You are mine. You are ours. I will never let you go." The doctor stepped back quietly, giving them privacy. In his long career, he had seen countless parents hear the first heartbeat. Some cried, some laughed, some sat in stunned silence. But rarely had he witnessed such reverence. A father on his knees, kissing the mother of his children, overcome by love so raw it seemed to sanctify the room. When the scan ended and Neo dressed again, Jiho was still kneeling, his eyes fixed on her stomach as though afraid to look away. She touched his cheek, lifting his tear-streaked face to hers. His smile was boyish, radiant, pure. He leaned forward once more, pressing another kiss to her belly. "I promise you," he whispered, "both of you. I will never let the world touch you. I will fight storms, silence threats, cross oceans. Nothing will harm you while I live." Neo's tears returned, but these were lighter, sweeter.